She should be.
We use that word international.
Hmm?
We have an international audience. So
That's right.
now you can say you spoke internationally.
Night Sky Song is broadcast around the world. Really big in Europe.
It's really big.
Almost equally big in Europe as it is here.
Almost equally as big in Europe as it is here.
Yeah, you do have some followers from over there, don't you? Forget.
Someone in Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I'm called very frequently by strangers for spiritual advice.
Are you? Well, it's a different perspective than what they would oftentimes get, that's for sure.
Yeah. Oh, let's see. We just had a little Firefox flaw. See, you start talking about shit and the whole internet goes down. Oh, I guess we're still live. Who knows?
Well, you can just stare at yourself and pretend that.
I do.
So.
I do that a lot.
Creates an ambiance.
Yeah, I look at myself a lot on a non-broadcasting screen just to see what facial expressions and tone of voice make it appear as if I'm the most enlightened
And the most sincere.
and the most sincere. This is-
Beaming helps.
Beaming. I like to practice some
Eye
beaming,
beaming.
eye beaming, and
Toggle between soft speaking and loud speaking.
soft speaking. Change
Dramatic,
tempo.
dramatic
right.
flares, hand waves,
Yeah.
Pink Floyd t-shirt. I mean, that had an effect.
Mhm.
Very different effect than this flowery thing.
Well, I pulled one of
Hawaiian shit.
Beth's blouses out of the closet. It was dark, and I went with it.
They're probably not going to be scared by the flowers.
No one could be intimidated by this look.
I don't know, they look like
More like a
scorpions to
nice
me.
gay man in Florida kind of thing going on. It's like, hello.
Regurgitating
Welcome.
scorpions.
I was listening to another Fresh Air Terry Gross interview with Maria Bamford. You know who that is?
No.
She's a comic. She's extremely neurotic, you know, all kinds of psychological, psychiatric problems. And
Nice.
so she's pretty funny,
I bet.
you know. And she had a special out. It was called Ask Me About My New God.
Oh, that's great.
I thought, just the name of it. I didn't see it, but oh my goodness, it sounds perfect. I mean, just the name of it, you couldn't improve upon it beyond the name.
What's her name?
Maria Bamford. She does some voiceovers and stuff like that. I think she's sort of tall, dark-haired, and she does these kind of odd, squeaky voices, and she always talks about like bizarre things, like, you know, her obsessive thoughts about like chopping her parents up into little pieces and,
We have the
Like-
same thoughts.
Whoa, we all have the same
you
thoughts.
know, things like that. You know,
I
just
never
like
heard that.
bizarre.
Are they alive? Apparently.
Yeah, yeah. She did a show with her parents as the only audience members in her parents' home.
That's funny.
And a guy on an organist, on the organ. And yeah, it sounded weird. And evidently, the way she actually got over that problem with that obsessive, those kinds of obsessive thoughts by some therapy where you actually go full bore into imagining the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. And it's just sort of so intense for so long. It's like, you know, you just
Yeah.
sort of frees you.
Yeah.
Sort of like
I think that might be what
spiritual
happened to me.
searching.
Spiritual searching is like that.
Maybe.
Nothing left to be afraid of.
Death is never the worst. In the trying to see what's the worst thing that could happen.
Yeah.
It's everything that would precede death.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But in a way, I think it relates because I remember I've always been listening to, like, I've listened to so many hours, so many podcasts and retreat things and stuff like that. I may not have gone to a lot, but I've listened to a lot, Eckhart Tolle and all these different people. And I don't know, I just don't have a lot of desire to hear too much of that stuff. Every once in a while, I'll put something on and it's like, okay. You know. But that's that immersion thing, I think, to some extent. Plus, you get so used to hearing these cliche terms and expressions and stuff like that. It doesn't have the same power after a while.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I mean, windows open. It's just such a nice breeze.
It's a three-pronged approach to suffering.
Sorry.
That's your phone. The Buddha only had
That's right.
Two.
I don't know what it's doing.
two prongs. It's better to have three.
Life is suffering. There's a way out of suffering. I mean, are we not going that way, or
Yeah, well, that's the Four Noble Truths.
okay?
Yeah, he had Four Noble Truths. He had an Eightfold Path. He had,
Did it really?
three characteristics. But suffering was, boiled down to attraction and aversion.
Hmm.
Just two. It's not good
Oh.
enough. The this new religion, Night Sky Sangha religion, is 3 prongs. 3 prongs. Then we could go to 1. I want to outsmart the Buddha, basically. So we go with 3 prongs and then to 1. So the prong number 1 is you've convinced yourself that you're not God. That must mean that someone else or something else is, but not you.
Yeah.
That's a bummer. Prong number 2 is that whoever you might imagine God to be, which is clearly not you, you don't trust her because you have a better plan. You always have a better plan. And prong 3 is the last thing on your mind is cessation, which you could say is you're just not interested in dying. And that's it.
As opposed to the 2, which are what again?
Attraction and aversion.
Attraction and aversion.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, Buddhism doesn't have the benefit of, the God thing because they don't have a God thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they still do, in their own ways.
But it's not really externalized, though, is it?
Well, Lord Buddha,
Oh, well.
it's one way.
Well, and all of it is just an idea. So any idea that you have is a god,
That's right.
An
If you have an
idealized
idea,
behavioral thing or whatever it is that should be occurring that's not occurring.
Yeah.
That's God.
Yeah.
It's like, boop.
yeah, that's right. If you have an idea, you have a God of some kind. So we live.
You anthropomorphize. You have a God right away in some weird way.
Yeah.
Yourself, anthropomorphize yourself.
So we, you could say, misunderstand or take no delight in presence itself, because we're under the influence of these 3, semi, if not unconscious, motivators. You've convinced yourself that you're not God. Whoever you take God to be, consciously or otherwise, you don't trust. And the last thing on your mind is an interest in cessation. You want your enlightenment, if that's an interest of yours, to be appearing. You want to be the enjoyer of realization or the fruits of realization. Again, the last thing on your mind is cessation. So realization has to show up as something to speak about, something to write home about, something to tell others about, in whatever poetic or flowery or ecstatic language you may use.
I wonder how it works in a symbolic way. In other words, where we deal mostly in verbal, memes, constructs and stuff like that. But for somebody that just doesn't engage very much verbally or in the story fashion, maybe they're a dancer or a musician or an artist or something like that, or a mathematician, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you have to have, the feeling, at least initially to me, was that there has to be some kind of a sense made of something, in a logical way or in a verbal way or in something like that to get a handle on. And then you realize this is just circular, it doesn't really go anywhere. You start to wonder, maybe these people that would just like sort of do their thing. Remember, there was Sufi Sam. I don't remember too much about him. It's just this from way back when, in the early days when I was getting involved in things. This guy, he was older at that point, and all he would just dance. That's like it, you know. And he was always smiling and embracing and stuff like that, and very little to say, you know. But and he seemed like sort of a nut to me, you know. But he seemed to have it going on. So sometimes I don't know the words. Maybe, like in this case, it seems like the words are used a little differently than in many cases where they're not gelling into an idea. They're more like acid on the idea or something like that, you know.
Oh, it's a radical invitation to begin to notice that being has its own vocabulary. Which does not self-convey as words. The language of being is not compulsed by time. It has no future. And it's, you could say it's relieved itself of the voyeuristic interest in its own past. All right. If we're embroiled in our own past, it's a kind of a voyeurism.
Or our own future, you know, really.
Yes, that's right. Consciousness as voyeur. It's nosy, right? Consciousness wants to get into everyone's business.
Every single like sound is like, that's about me, right? This is about me. What does that have to do with me? It's like, what this does, that's just a sound. It doesn't make, like, I mean, it could just be anything, like a door from a neighbor. Does that have something to do with me? It was kind of loud. Maybe they're angry. I mean, it's like, dude, this doesn't have anything to do with you. It's crazy. It's constant solicitation.
Yeah,
Constant.
that's right.
Dude.
Well, it's unnerving as much as it is liberating that nothing is about you.
Yeah, because you totally see, it's like you're like, I'm totally irrelevant, but you like the relaxation in some way. You know, it feels better, but it's like you kind of still want to be relevant a little. You're like, but there's like this weird, you know, something has to be about me.
Give me something.
Somebody has to be interested in me besides me.
That's the hope.
Nope.
Through observation and conversation and consideration of the warp and woof of conscious contact. Curiously, if not miraculously, you can observe the texture of what we might refer to as reality, which is curious. So, because otherwise, if you were purely the product of your own neurotic identification, that would be kind of a miserable dead end. And you could say that most humans are, living under the influence of a miserable dead end.
It's about the way I felt at 3 o'clock this morning,
There.
3 to 5.
At 3 to 5, you had your miserable dead end
Yeah.
appointment.
I was working on the basement of the house in my mind all over again, just revisiting that same thing with
Yeah,
dust coming down and cutting and hellish.
yeah. Mm-hmm. We go to mind and imagination. You could say by default. Which is a way of, occupying self through abstraction. Because the mind is not capable of intimacy with reality. The mind is only capable of heresy.
Is there something capable of comprehending reality?
Reality itself, which can't be the kind of comprehension that we usually refer to.
Right.
Yeah, right. We usually refer to comprehension as placing some kind of subject or experience in some kind of context, which might be related to a spiritual or scientific or whatever secular explanation. Well, then it becomes an object.
It's like your synchronistic scale thing on Facebook or whatever. It's just synchronistic scales stitched together with a storyline.
Yeah, that's
It's
right.
like toe, foot. It's just these scales that are just, body, hand,
Yeah.
and you're just stitching it together in this very bizarre
Yeah.
fantasy
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
It's just scales.
That's all it is.
Scales.
It's cascading scales.
And there's not really any scales. You've made them all up.
They're all made up.
So it's like,
Yeah, that's right. Cascading scales suggests that your experience is either the consequence of something, that it's related to something, that you have, some kind of power. And all of this luscious rumination is pure fantasy. That doesn't make it good or bad or correct or incorrect or anything. It's just the revelation of what appears in mind is the imagination of scales that suggest context or consequence. And that, you could say, kind of beautiful palette of imagination. How could you put it? Curiously suggests self. Curiously suggests individuated identification.
Well, it automatically has to be subject object, right? I mean, as soon as it starts, bang, you know, there's a perspective all of a sudden.
Well, it's funny. I mean, subject, object, and perspective, and you could say sense of self that those may elicit are all the same.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, the mind, you know, through language can assign names and therefore priority or consequence and temporality to what is observed. Like, well, first it's like this, then it's like that, and then it's like that, and boom, you're fucked. But you see, it's not that way. It's not actually like that, because there is no step A, B, C, D resulting in
All these differentiated steps.
that's see that, because all of that differentiation, which we're, you know, marvelously capable of, is again a form of fantasy.
Do you feel like there's a stepwise approach? I'm sort of answering my own question. You know, like the idea of this differentiation can get more and more vast, so that pretty soon it just all folds into a unification. You know.
Well, the language of the sages, you know, points to that.
Yeah, that's what it seems.
Which is like to answer the question: is there anything capable of of an apprehension of reality?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, reality is pretty capable of it, but that comprehension is no comprehension at all.
I guess, yeah, comprehension.
Yeah, comprehension is already, you know, too downstream. So one is already, you could say, as perfectly realized as you're ever going to be, if there were such a thing. And that the fondness we have for mind and self and body and temporality and consequence and imagination, in a sense, you know, kind of obscures the already present inclusivity of the entirety of being. So we're rethinking, you know, suffering cause one, which is, you've convinced yourself that you're not God. That you are the consequence in a material, right, plenum of the Big Bang and
Shitty parenting
shitty parenting
in a fucked up culture
in a fucked up culture, yeah.
where
Right.
Trump might be president.
Yeah,
Oh, not good.
right. That's the default of one's consciousness, is to go to the banal
You can see why
presumption
suicide's up.
of, you know, individuation and being creature centric. And when you look at what is the evidence that I rely upon, consciously or otherwise, to convince myself that my experience is that of a creature, itself a consequence of events that occurred yesterday or 1 billion or 14 billion years ago. And so consciousness identifies with whatever it finds, you know, as itself, but in our case, apart from. So that means you must be the outcome of something other than you, which means you're consequential. You're a creature in space-time. And what's reinforcing that? I don't know if sensation is reinforcing
Your
it.
own neurotic thoughts about it.
Is sensation reinforcing this notion that you're a creature in space-time?
I mean, I wonder if I have sensation when I dream. You know, it would seem as though, but maybe
Depends on how vivid the dream.
I guess.
and whether the vividness in the so-called dream is being mirrored, in your physical sleeping body.
Well, it's like,
that. I mean,
Yeah.
I either don't believe in or completely believe in the idea that we can project to other creatures. But for example, a monkey or a dog or any number of creatures seem to have sensations,
Yeah.
And does that make them self-aware?
see, this is the funny thing. You think you only anthropomorphize other animals and objects, but you actually are anthropomorphizing yourself. You have to
Yeah.
start there.
Yeah, you're right. Yourself is just part of the whole
The whole
menagerie.
thing. And then you compare yourself anthropomorphized to other things, but you're not actually anthropomorphized either. It's like,
Yeah,
really.
it's a
Well, so see, like
160-degree anthropomorphization.
pretty much, which is that's, you could say, the creative movement of scales and association with these scales as a verifiable reality that you find yourself construed in as an observer. You're an observer of phenomena, an individuated, separate, call it conscious, sentient, self-aware observer of phenomena. And you didn't do this. So there must be someone or something else that could be held responsible for the curious realization that something's going on, and I can't be held responsible for it.
Well, to say I didn't do this means that I actually have accepted that there's this changing thing going on that's outside of me, doesn't it? I mean, doesn't it assume that I've already accepted,
Oh, yeah. Yes,
that there's,
that's right. You're already in receipt of phenomena
right.
in a way that places you as an individual.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, yeah. As soon as it's like, I mean.
It's pretty funny.
Right, that's just like the bang, well,
Yeah.
it's all, no matter what you want to call it, it's all the same thing.
That's right. Yeah.
It's all
The
separation.
commencement of neurosis.
Yeah.
I should rename it. Are you a big banger? No. We refer to it now as the commencement of neurosis.
Or con.
Con. That's right.
Always
The
has to have a
big,
good
the big,
acronym.
the big con. The big con.
Con!
Right. That's right. Not the Star Trek con,
Oh.
like the Big Lebowski con.
Yeah, that's,
Commencement of neurosis. So if there were freedom, and even that's curious, right?
yeah.
What? Freedom from what? Freedom from whom? Yeah. But the suggestion of, the self-realization game might not have anything to do with how you conduct yourself in your life. Whether you have behavioral advantages, magical powers, insights into your past lives, levitation. Those may occur, and God bless you if they do. But we're looking at it, from, I would say, I don't know what to say, a little more subtle and more curious point of view, which is you unwind from the implication of all the scales that you have taken to be true or binding.
Yeah, you just give them all the big two middle fingers up.
Yeah, it's a double-barreled bird flip.
But it's weird because it's really just you giving yourself you just have to tell yourself to fuck off.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, the whole thought thing, just be like, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah, if anyone needs to fuck off, well, it turns out that has to be you.
Yeah, well, you as the life coach
Yes.
needs to be fired.
Yeah.
And then
Fire-
double flip the bird, maybe
Fire-
let him fire in a Bunsen burner room. You know, I don't know.
Fire your life coach. That's right. Because if we don't give some attention to, let's say, the unraveling of the myth of scales, which is right consciousness individuated. Consciousness is a consequential outcome of God knows what, tangling with the uncertainty and vague arena of experiencing. If we don't get out from under that influence, then
We're ruined.
you're gonna be always under the influence of creature, or under the influence of phenomena, and how you relate to phenomena, how you crave phenomena, how you resist phenomena, which is back to the Buddha's attraction and aversion, right?
Back to stuff.
Yeah. Right, how you crave, and by virtue of craving, how you avert. Then they're the same. So realization, if there were such a thing, would have to be curiously unchartable, irrational. You couldn't find it, in other words, within the boundary field of creature. Because if you could, it wouldn't be satisfying. Is that a giant bumblebee? Holy shit, we're gonna die.
The building.
That's where all the bees went. They didn't disappear. They just turned into
One giant bee. God.
with alien intelligence.
It's however big it is, man, I could like rip your head off. Sting you right in the face.
A little late for this to be happening, this lawn mowing noise.
This.
You know, from a professional, for the neighbors, whatever.
Well, you know.
I mean, I know it's not too late, but you know.
Well, they probably had a rain day,
Who
so they
wants
had
to
to
hear
make
it
up
anyway?
for
Yeah.
something, you know.
God, it must have flown away.
Yeah.
We're safe. Nope, it's back.
It was just having a snack.
Yeah, snacking on a dog. It's not every sangha that's visited by a giant bumblebee.
With alien intelligence.
Part of it, the third step.
The third
round.
step.
Well, they're attracted to this stuff.
Yeah, the bees are attracted to this. Yeah,
Because they're sacred.
that's right.
Saturday Night Live thing.
Is it a bee to honey or more like a fly to shit?
Going with the flag.
Go with the fly? Yeah, go with the fly.
I was talking to my mom the other day. She's like, "Why does everything always have to turn into be about poop with you?" I'm like, I don't. I just started laughing so hard. I'm like, I think it's nice.
You're on
nice
today.
Yeah, take the shit, for instance.
Just change it to honey.
That's right. That's right. Change it to honey and put on a diaper.
I gotta go take a honey.
Sounds a little nicer.
Oh, that sounds so special.
Sounds so special.
We'll hypnotize you and change your vocabulary accordingly.
Sensation of its own accord does not suggest individuation.
No, it seems like, there's a reaction to the, this mental reaction to sometimes sensations, like, oh, that felt good, or I think I like this, it's that kind of thing, or I don't know, this is not what I wanted, or, it's all this stuff that goes on, and pretty soon, like immediately, you're reflecting upon it. So I'm like, well, this isn't getting me anywhere.
It's really difficult, if not impossible, to, let's say, explore what you might refer to as your own experience and parse it out to, well, what's consciousness and what's identification and what's sensation and what's body and what's memory and what's attraction and what's aversion, and
Sounds like a lot of work.
well, yeah. So there's a pointing to the cessation of differentiation, the cessation of individuation.
I mean, that sounds like that's the whole thing, just like everything else sounds like it's the whole thing. We're saying the same thing, but I mean, I kind of like that. I don't know, somehow that rings for me or something like that. I'm thinking about that discussion I had with that super duper Christian, and it's like, just let it go. You have these feelings. Why do you have to gel them into some belief or something? Just see if you can like expand it. Just let all that stuff go. Reciting scripture. It's like, in other words, just love what's there, but messing with the concepts.
Well, religion is practiced as a form of pride. Pride of faith, pride of belief, pride of, reciting the good book, whether it's the Pali Canon or the Old or New Testament, whether it's the Quran or, the Talmud or the fucking Zohar.
I think it's a way of people to say, hey, I'm somebody, I made a decision, and I decided to entertain this notion, and I found it to be satisfying, and you should too. And I think every time
first I'll tell you about it, and then if you reject it, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just an excuse to talk about it and put themselves out there in conceptual reality or whatever, just reifying.
Human as fool.
Yeah. And I find that I get nowhere with people that are like that. At least I can think of some real good examples where I went down that road and it's like, okay, they're gone. And that's fine,
Well, it's fine as long as they're not chasing you with a pitchfork.
Yeah. Well, you can keep your distance, your physical distance in many of these things.
Nowadays, not if you were a communist back in the day, though.
Well, this hallucination field, called creature or mind. Wow.
We can shut that window if you want. If you like doing it, take me 5 minutes to get up.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, no, Jamie should definitely do that.
He's gone away. It's going to take a minute. He's just blowing the hair off of the walks.
Green hair.
Glad someone is neatening the place up. This problem of convincing yourself that you're not God creates a lot of enmity,
Yeah, it does. Jeez.
a lot of anger and enmity
Yeah.
and fear, rage. Yeah.
Well, people just, my impression, and maybe I have this impression because I was like that too. It's like, I can imagine them looking, saying, what are you getting at? What are you trying to say? It's all like, there's something here I'm not getting. In other words, you're saying something that has a hook to it, but I'm not catching the hook. And it's like, no, I'm not saying anything that has a hook. I mean, I don't think I am. I might be. Maybe it has a little hook. I don't know. But that's not the point, And it's like, it's almost as if, no. You have to believe in something and you got to go for it, And it's like, you got to decide, that type of thing, And it's,
Well, sure. I mean, that malignancy, is a driving force for the species.
yeah.
That malignancy is violent and violating. Through pride and belief and, a million ways that it suggests xenophobia. We rarely question the confidence that we have about taking up residence in consciousness as a creature. As an, independent, individuated, willful, choiceful, desireful creature.
It's an assumption, right?
You wonder, it's not even an assumption. Right? I mean, it's so baked in.
Yeah, it occupies. Yeah.
When you're taking a leap of faith or a leap of heresy to recalibrate or reconsider the nature of experiencing not through the eyes of a creature. As not being the consequence of anything, or having influence or consequence on something else. I mean, the whole co-create with reality thing is, I wonder, because it just, you become filled instantaneously with insatiable desire by being a creator, so you can have a job, a relationship, success, spiritual experiences. Why would you want that?
With all the other creators, you can like have a
Yeah, we can
creator fest.
all hold hands and turn off the Navy sonar, so the whales don't have to, their ears don't have to bleed. It's bad out there.
It's pretty bad.
Everything's being violated.
So this does is violate itself.
It's-
That's the
yeah.
fucked up part. You're like, okay, so wait, that's all this does is violate
Yeah.
itself.
God, the
Yeah.
great sodomizer.
I mean, we like to think that we have control, or that our thoughts control things. There was something
That's
I heard.
why I think we like to witch it up. Like witching it up is not necessarily an issue. It can be fun, but when you then, it's like you want to put a spell on something. You're spelling everything, and then you have some kind of control,
Well, and
imaginary control.
And
because-
it's like the same, that's just using that language, but I think everybody does it. It seems
yeah,
like,
your personality, you break it out however you think you might get your way, give them a cute face, little smile, whatever it is you do is like a weird spell that you're trying, it's like a strange.
I don't know how much to believe in studies, but there was some study that looked at people that had a positive outlook and thought they could control things, and this whole rich, mental thing about goodness in health and the diet and stuff like that, and others that were like dire and like all is lost, and
They
they
have
found
the
that
same results.
they have the same results, as far as like
Getting what they wanted
sickness and
or
stuff like that. It's like there was no
no difference.
statistical difference, which is like, nah, surely the positive people had to bring on more health, or
No.
all that stuff. And it's like, at least not according to that study.
But everything is like that. I know plenty of people that could smoke like crazy and like no issues, and I have like,
Yeah.
a week of cigarettes and I'm like, I'm gonna die.
Somebody chews
know,
snuff in college and they get lip cancer and they die or something, Other people, like, my stepfather smoked and drank, from age 9 on. It was
He's fine, right?
86,
Yeah.
or so, and it's like, no problem,
Yeah,
Well, I mean, it probably did kill him. But
something was bound to.
yeah, it's 86. It's arbitrary. It's all very
Yeah.
arbitrary.
It's like the criminal justice system.
Arbitrary is all. That's definitely
Yeah.
arbitrary.
Pretty arbitrary.
pretty random. Not saying, I mean, you can determine reasons, but you can't figure them out ahead of time too successfully. Well, sometimes you can, of course. But I mean, you can't know all the reasons. What's the point of it?
Very playful, this thing. It's very playful.
It's insane.
It's insane.
Constant solicitation
Yeah,
and constant insanity. It's just like, what
yeah.
the fuck?
We go into arbitration in our own imagination. We plead our case. We're the defendant, and we're
We're playing both roles.
victim, and we're the attorneys and the judge and
But
the
in your head, you can go
I'm
through
gonna
them
be the
so
judge.
fast that
The
it's
jury.
insane, back and forth. It's not like you have to change clothes or anything, you know, it's
Yeah.
like so easy. You don't even realize half the time, like what, you know, if you slow it down, you're like, who's what?
who's speaking now.
Yeah, like it's just a jumble of psychosis,
Yeah.
really.
Boom,
That's
boom,
just
boom,
kind of
boom.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's flying. And you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's like, what is me in all of this?
Yeah, it's a jumble.
Where am I in all this? You know? It occurs to me, you know, it's like, it's just,
The interface, if you will, with conscious contact, in this case, in the mental sphere, is bananas. It's totally bananas. And then we convince ourselves of being whatever it is we take ourselves to be, behaviorally and attitudinally, and what chances we have of whatever it is we might be interested in. Or and this streaming presentation is all fabricated.
it's a big calculator up there.
So there's there's the presentation, let's say, of some psychic spaciousness. We're not tangling with the mind factory or the identity or the rumination that insists on past or present or future. So the, what would you call it, the intensity of imagination and what it's conveying, you could say softens or relaxes.
Yeah. I'm thinking of two different types of, for lack of a better term, mind fuck.
That's a good term.
And the one is just totally being caught up in reverie, imagination, you know, ideas of future. And the other is being stuck in a place, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Being stuck in a place in your mind that you don't like.
Yes.
Now, it seems like all of these things are going to be experienced, and I'm just going to bring this into it just for kicks, like under LSD or some hallucinogen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have enough experience with it, but I'm thinking that
There's still time.
yeah, that's why I'm holding out for that. That a bad trip would be one of those things, and a nice trip would be the lack of those things. But I don't know if I'm simplifying it or complicating it or whatever. But I mean, I don't. It's just what occurs to me. It's just an observation that I'm throwing out there to see if it sticks.
Hmm. Like pasta and a wall.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I'm thinking of Sid Barrett, you know, our good friend Sid. What the hell was going on with him? Was he stuck in a bad place?
Hmm.
Or was he living out of sync? You know, he was stuck in the non-present, you'd say.
There's no end to Bardo. There's no limit to Bardo. Even expressed in what we call, human experience.
Do you want this?
Yeah, like without acid,
Okay.
I had an
No,
experience
no,
where I went to
Without
see,
acid.
Just moving
see
around.
this apartment,
Little
and then when I went back,
Yeah.
the floors were like completely different than what I like. There was drastic differences. I was like, is this the same fucking place?
Wait a minute,
like,
this is just
I
you were going by
Wow.
your memory, you're saying,
Yeah,
and then
it
you.
was like not there were one floor in particular, the kitchen floor was completely different. I was like,
You were looking at different things, you just filled in the blanks.
I don't know. It was crazy. I was still confused. Like I keep looking at the floor and I'm like, I still have an image in my head of this first play thing that I said. It's a totally, I'm like, I don't know. It's too weird.
Probably had a psychic image of where Sid Barrett first lived or something.
You don't know, like what the fuck? It's
You
like,
just
dude,
don't.
I don't know. Could have been like a weird portal that I like zipped in and out of two different, I don't know,
That's right.
I mean, I really don't. Like, I don't know. I think it's the same place.
Maybe.
You both have the toothpicks.
Toothpick Sandra.
Toothpick. So.
But it does, like, changing the focus of scale can get trippy very easily. Like, focusing, really extensively for even just a little bit of time on this little ant
Yeah.
is a very different experience than
Yes.
just focusing on the scale of people. Like, I was at the river the other day and there was a boat, and you can't help, there's something like the human to human, obsessive. And then I just changed to a spider, and it's like this spider, observing the spider, but like the human was just in the background as this small, like little boat thing. But the spider was really big because that's where
It was closer to you.
that's what I was looking at. That's what I was.
Yeah.
Not because it was the attention
Yes.
placed that the spider was more important or just as fascinating as the human dimension, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That game of. Whatever it is we call human, I don't know what that is even, but you know what I mean?
Human game.
Just kind of.
Trivial pursuits. What's interesting is that it seems to me that the good trip may not have real content in it. You know what I mean? It's just no. And by content, I guess automatically I'm thinking mental content. You know what I mean? So it's just like the lousy space that you find yourself in mentally.
Yeah.
Or what? And if that has a timeline to it, you take that away, the mental content, I don't know that you can make any claims except for there's maybe you could say a fullness or something like that. But it's not specific. Again, it's the openness,
It's non-specific.
It's non-specific. Yeah. And I've become aware of that sometimes. I've talked about, some of these places, and sometimes I'm in the car and I'm traveling through, and all of a sudden it's like, there's woods all around, the valleys and stuff, and it's beautiful. And I do find myself saying, look at that, there's a tree, and look at that, and I'm specific, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I don't have to do that.
Yes.
There's no need to.
that call it attracting force
Yeah.
to suggest or report on specificity.
Right.
You could say that's the engine or the genesis of self.
I see a bird come down and I think, man, if I wasn't colorblind, I'll bet you I would say, look at that purple bird or something. But
Yeah.
now I have no clue what it is.
So you do see purple birds.
Well, I see them whatever color they appear to me. I don't know. Who can tell?
Who can tell? So there's this immersive, nonstop, right? Fluid, streaming tickle, which is non-specific.
Till it's here.
The creation of specificity is kind of like targeted myopia.
Yeah.
Because we become enamored of what it appears to be appearing, and then everything that we think about what appears to be appearing, and then the story, the soliloquy of imagination pops in with no delay, fully blown, which is a gesture, you could say, an impulse of specificity.
And they're really
Scales and
feels
specificity are interchangeable in this one.
Yes, scales and
it really
specificity.
feels like there's an impulse too. I mean, that word sounds right because at night I keep talking about this, but at night I'm trying to sleep and not dwell on thoughts.
Right.
And then at a certain time in the morning, I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm not going to sleep anymore. I'm going to allow myself to just think.
That's
and it's
right.
like, oh,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, let me,
Yeah,
it's like all of a
right.
sudden open the doors, you
Uh-huh.
know, and there's an attractiveness to it.
Yes. That's right.
So there is something there.
And turns out Pandora's wearing a really interesting gown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to shun that for too long just like holds back it's like the doors get flung open much faster when that happens.
Yeah. Yes. Learning to consider and discover what it feels like to rest in non-specificity is what all the yogas are about.
Yeah.
What is it that breaks the back of the myth of individuation? It's strange. This, right, the impulse for the desire, the thrill of dwelling in mind or reverie or specificity, particularization.
I think in my case, I think a lot of it is just because I live my days most of the day is spent in specificity. So it's like a habit. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
that's just what I do, man.
Sure.
So it's like, okay, let me go to there. At least I know what that is, maybe I can have some fun with it. It's that kind of a.
You could say we, yeah, we educate our young, which is
boy.
perhaps better than eating them. You
No,
could
I
say
don't think so.
far too early. We introduce our children,
Yeah, I was thinking.
arguably far too early, to the neurosis of specificity.
Yeah.
You might be better off staying in kindergarten kind of through your 20s and then start thinking about shit.
Have to go through primal therapy otherwise, or something.
I think that, apes are a lot more relaxed with their young.
They don't have the same agendas.
Different agenda. Yeah. Yeah, we've become we've become insane. As the booby prize of having a neocortex, a dreaming, self-aware, highly symbolic neocortex. It's driven us crazy.
But the behavioral stuff, it kind of seems so similar in some ways. It's really funny. Like my new place, I'm just like Fred. I'm like marking everything. It smelled kind of a certain way. I want it to smell like me. I'm just rubbing all over everything and putting little stuff up instead of peeing. I'm just putting little knickknacks everywhere.
That's good anyway.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that.
I don't know that it's that much different,
No.
Yeah, you want to take the strangeness out of it.
You want it to smell like, be like you, or, yeah, you mark it. It's like a weird,
Everything is leaving its scent.
Yeah.
Everything does this, leaves its scent.
Yeah, it had a distinct scent when I came in, and the scent is changing. It's funny. It's
Mhm.
bizarre. I'm like, odor Francine has moved in. And Fred.
Yeah. Move over. Here comes my aroma. I mean, we are profoundly carnal.
We are. It's funny. It's just like, I don't know what.
Weaning ourselves from specificity is the perennial yogic journey, the Gnostic journey. I mean, you don't see it emphasized in the church or the temple or the mosque.
It seems.
I mean, it's hard to find even in the Zendo or the dojo, the meditation hall.
Yeah. It's odd. It's weird. It's like if you want to pretend there's a point, it will be the point.
Instead, we batten down the hatches and become more prideful and more violent within the field of the specificity that we've become loyal to, we believe in. The superstition.
Yeah, it seems.
We've figured out how to convince ourselves that we're not God. Whoever might be responsible for this mess, we sure as shit don't trust. And the last thing on our minds is cessation.
Yeah, and anybody that's practicing cessation is like, that's like the get them off with their heads.
Awful there.
I was having a phone conversation today, and the metaphor that showed up is that imagine yourself in a really cold environment, and
No.
I know that's all.
No.
And the moment your nose drips, it freezes. So in that way, everyone's nose is snowing. See? Your nose is snowing. That's what you think's going on. Before you even have the slightest thought about anything, your own snot freezes and has become something. So here's this impulse, this ongoing, apparently provocative impulse to particularize, to objectify, place oneself in some kind of context, live under the influence of content. And the discovery, however it comes, gradually fits and starts, a big ecstatic, who the fuck cares? The discovery is this inclusivity stops particularizing. Stops objectifying. It doesn't mean you can't find your car keys or
That was my next.
Be habitually neurotic and
or be habitually neurotic and make a living
be a
out of
kind
it,
of
being a
autism
comic.
book.
Yeah, right.
Where everything has to be in a very specific place.
Yeah. The guy must be pretty good at what he does since it's dark out.
Something by instinct.
Yeah, you think they'd be done by now.
Yeah. We're going to get noise complaints.
He was just moving.
Just driving it up on the truck. Mindfulness is really saying too much. Mindfulness is, what the fuck? Mindful of what? Is anything you witness, anything that appears in your so-called experience is going to suck you into scales scales and fascination. That's what attention does. Attention.
Well, isn't that noticing? I mean, noticing is sort of like that.
Well, see, each one of these, well-intentioned, right metaphors are doing their best to draw your attention to non-specificity, to the immersive, fully inclusive, unbroken, non-dual revelation of non-specificity.
So, I mean, in the realm of specificity,
Yes.
something like noticing is maybe a step in the right direction. But if you go to a point of non-specificity, noticing is a step in the wrong direction.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Be careful that when you pull a thorn with a thorn, throw the thorns away. Yeah.
That's all double-edged. That's why it's hard to talk about.
Well, the snot freezes instantaneously, so you think you're dwelling in an atmosphere of objects as a subject or as an object yourself, when you're not. That's what drives us insane. The pressure of imagined continuity of experience as self.
So much different, that context of a feeling, than a shifting like vignettes with self
Yes.
in it.
Mm-hmm.
Self, it like can still be there, but it's just like observing anything in a strange artscape. It's like a weird. It's just.
Mm-hmm.
You mean sort of more of a detachment? Is that what you mean, sort of?
Yeah, like you're just as interested in that as anything. Just not.
You're just as interested. Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's not like. Well, I don't know. It's not.
Why
really
separate?
explainable.
Why make it something different and less or something?
Well, instead of taking everything in your experiencing in through your identity, your identity is just kind of an aspect of an artscape that's not really that. It's just kind of.
It's just one of the parts. Yeah.
Maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Right.
Even that is like. I mean.
Yeah, you can't conclude. You can't conclude.
It might show up. It might not. Whatever. It might rain. It might not.
Why doesn't he pee outside?
The last little bit that was nice.
Oh, we can stop all of this foolishness.
Time, speed,